It's the first match of the day here at Hearthstone Grandmasters for the Asia Pacific region once again. The other regions will be following shortly after in Europe and Americas, but for now, we are focusing on che0nsu versus Flurry. And Gia, what are your thoughts heading up into this first series, both on the players and the archetypes? Whatever you want to talk about.
As for players, let's start with that. I think that you did mention that che0nsu barely sneaked by, mainly at the end. He was just a sitting target, whether or not Blitzchung could make it. Fortunately for che0nsu, Blitzchung did fall at the very last hurdle there. So I think che0nsu has got a lot to prove. And Flurry, similar story, because even though he did make it into Division A, I don't think he had one of those super memorable performances compared to our top four, for example. But I do think both of these players have years and years of experience in Hearthstone. They're very, very old names that if you're a fan of the Korean scene, you would know them at the first glance. So I think they've got a lot to prove, but at the same time, they'll be very familiar to our viewers.
They will indeed. A very popular C9 streamer is Flurry. And taking a look at the archetypes here, I think this really sets the trend well for what we can expect to see today. Double warrior ban. If you're factoring in Demon Hunter, Rogue, both of which I would argue are fairly weak up against warrior, and then a fourth class which generally also is weak to warrior. Turns out warrior is a pretty good deck. I really think that that is the best way to go, and then leave the rest of the classes to kind of forage for the leftovers amongst themselves.
Right. And so that fourth class, we're seeing here that they're both hunter, but the key difference is the archetypes, because che0nsu, as we featured a while ago, is bringing that face hunter. And I think that'll work to his advantage, even just looking at the head-to-head against Flurry's hunter, which is Highlander and tends to take a longer time to get onto the board.
So the way you're saying that there, it kind of sounds like face hunter is just better. Why do you think these players would be bringing the Highlander hunter overall? Does it help in any of the other matchups?
I feel like Highlander Hunter probably has less polarized matchups. We were saying this as early as week 2 when there was last hero standing. If you just bring 4 decks that kind of don't feel too bad to queue up against anything, that could be a solid strategy. Whereas Face Hunter is very, very one-dimensional. It's predictable, and it can be... the game can sometimes feel like it's lost if you just bring a deck that has removal. Things like Resurrect Priest, for example, or anything with enough healing to kind of outlast the burn. But I think that it's actually a very heads-up bring for Face Hunter, because knowing that decks like Rogue and other Highlander Hunters will be in the field, they're not actually running any healing.
Oh, and we get to see a perfect demonstration of the two Hunter in our first game, with che0nsu again on that aggro Face Hunter, and Flurry taking it on with the Highlander Hunter, a much more mid-range deck, which generally, Gia, especially with che0nsu's hand, I think would favor che0nsu.
Yeah, I would agree. Even though you would technically want to go first in nearly every matchup as Face Hunter, just to be able to make sure that you're dictating the tempo. I think with a hand like this from che0nsu, with the double 1-drops, you won't mind being on the coin here. So Flurry's game plan, I think, is to not draw cards like that. That is way too slow. And Flurry needs his own Dwarven Sharpshooter and possibly Zephyrus, either as heal or removal, but 1-drop off the top definitely going to help him here.
It is indeed. However, che0nsu threw away his own Blazing Battle Mage in the mulligan. I guess his game plan wasn't to go coin double 1, and instead is looking for more of those mid-game powerhouse cards, which he has found with potentially coin Face Stalk here. I think that's a great way to get onto the board. And like you said, there's pretty few aggressive early game cards that can be used to remove it on turn 2.
Yeah, it seems that it's actually Corrosive Breath, and that requires a Dragon in hand to be active. And of course, this is Highlander Hunter. They can't have it as consistently as something like Dragon Hunter. And Flurry already is really, really upset to see that no answers available. che0nsu is going to be able to get a free explosive shot if he wants.
It is a pretty big disaster, but already I can see che0nsu being rewarded for his game plan, throwing away the fairly safe keep of Blazing Battle Mage in the mulligan, and instead looking more for those powerhouse 2 and arguably 3 drops, has put him in a great position, because now, even though an Explosive Trap isn't especially powerful in this matchup, just sticking a 2-3, getting that bit of extra damage to the face and making things awkward for Flurry is such a boon.
And I think that going for the hero power this early from che0nsu might not necessarily be the way he wants to go about it, because something like Imprisoned Felmaw coming down on this turn could give him such a huge payoff early on in the game. Whereas you mentioned, Explosive Trap probably isn't going to help him too much. So I wouldn't mind just playing that and trading. Or even going something like the Sharpshooter and the Arcane shot. But che0nsu says, I want the secret, let's go.
I really do like your point, Jiv, because it's kind of just, they come as a pair to me. If you go coin into the Phase Stalker, you have to hero power after, which is obviously a faulty mindset to have when you're playing this deck. I guess just the idea that it thins your deck as well is a really big part of che0nsu's thinking here, because drawing Explosive Trap sounds absolutely awful, whereas having it for free and now being able to get the Eagle Horn Bow online equals a lot of damage.
That is huge success for che0nsu. And I think another factor for him going for the hero power there is that, well, Flurry's got a 2-2 minion that doesn't trade well against his 2-3. If Flurry ever wants to get the payoff from che0nsu not trading, he's got to kill off the Battle Mage. So che0nsu's like, I can just ignore this if I have the secret up. And that makes a lot of sense to me. But now, another tough decision. He's got a lot of ways he can go about dealing damage to Flurry's face. And I think if we're sticking with his game plan from last turn, I'm looking at the Eagle Horn Bow and just shipping it face.
It's definitely tempting. He needs to start thinking about answers that can come down. It's mostly turn 4, I feel like, with the Faceless Corruptor that can be used to clear off the board if the Blazing Battle Mage sticks around. So I think you could definitely get away with going face on this turn with the Eagle Horn Bow.
Or also take the develop. But for Flurry, the problem remains. He doesn't have any ways to guaranteed buff the Battle Mage. He could try and roll for Yawk to try and clear off a minion, but that's floating mana and also is just not very fast. Just removing 1 damage, and then che0nsu gets to keep dictating how the trades go. Any at all.
It really does just feel so awful for Flurry. I think on this turn, I prefer the Dragonbane the most, just because it allows you to get the most health on board. And then when you're heading into turn 5, you have the highest chance of sticking something for a Faceless Corruptor to corrupt, and then swing the board back in your favor.
Yeah, it also lines up very well against che0nsu's minions. The 3 attack takes nice value trades against everything left. But Flurry might already be feeling pressured to clear something immediately. And instead goes for the third option of the evasive Feywing. That's the most damage he can put onto the board.
Yep, and it obviously can't be targeted by the hero power that the Dwarven Sharpshooter does activate for che0nsu. So it's definitely a close call. My thinking was, though, that if Flurry goes for the Dragonbane and che0nsu decides to point a hero power at it instead of at Flurry's face, I'd probably be pretty happy with that in Flurry's position.
That's right. I am a little bit surprised to see that Feywing for that reason. But onto che0nsu's turn now. He's drawn the Stone Tusk Boar, and anybody who hasn't seen this deck before might be thinking, what is that doing in Hearthstone in 2020 at the highest level of competition? Well, it has a lot of payoff with other cards in the deck that che0nsu hasn't drawn yet that buff it from hand. But here, it already provides che0nsu with an option to, say, equip the Eagle Horn and just use it to clear off the 2-1, or possibly even the Feywing.
Man, it's such a tough call for che0nsu because he has the ability to have a fairly clean clear on the board with Eagle Horn Bow and Stone Tusk Boar plus the Sharpshooter to clear everything off. But in the end, he only clears off one of them because I think what this really nicely does is puts the damage to face where it needs to be, and also makes for a Faceless Corruptor that's not quite so powerful.
It was interesting to see that he took the value trade on the Battle Mage instead of using his Stone Tusk Boar. I feel like that might be a little bit unsafe to something like Unleash the Hounds, but I just noticed... wait, it isn't for Flurry. So the thinking, I guess, is that he doesn't need to play around one specific card because it is a Highlander deck, but Flurry has been able to finally swing back the board, and now che0nsu, I think, is going to be pointing all of the damage one place only.
Absolutely. It's just the way that the Face Hunter matchups go. As you were saying, it's a very one-dimensional deck. You try and control the board in the first 3 or so turns, and thereafter, everything goes to the dome. Definitely not the best options he could have found there. He was looking for something, I think, a little bit more impactful, like the Unleash the Hounds, or maybe another kill command to get the damage to face. But Arcane Shot, it's not nothing.
We see here che0nsu actually prioritizing pressing his hero power instead of utilizing something like, say, kill command or even re-equip the other eagle horn bow. And that's actually a little bit surprising to me because I do understand that you want to get as hero powers through as soon as possible, but the way the hand looks, I think he's able to put the 2-turn clock anyway, but having used the hero power and maybe be a bit more efficient with his mana. But actually
He's obviously
using...
got to do...
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. Well, I was going to say, Gio, that he needs to be calculating the 2-turn lethal potential, especially if you factor in Dino Tamer Brand for 8 burst damage that can come shortly after for che0nsu, for Flurry. And therefore he goes for the Arcane Shot on the Faceless Corruptor to kill it with the Explosive Trap thereafter. It's a little bit less damage, but it maybe gives him that extra turn that he needs afterwards to get it to face.
Yeah, you definitely see the thinking behind it. And Flurry, I think very rightfully, doesn't even bother proccing the Explosive Trap. He says, my clock is now going to be through the Dragon Bane. But as it stands, che0nsu is saying, I have the lethal next turn, so you gotta kill me now.
And it doesn't look like he's going to be able to do that here, Gio.
Nope. He will be able to play a taunt at the very least. I'm already looking at something like tracking to try and find Zephyrus, but he could just dig for and the injured 12-year, and he gets exactly that. But che0nsu will be able to guaranteed draw a beast off of the Scavenger's Ingenuity, or just play the other kill command.
Well, that's one off, because he can't fit in the hero power as well. And so here, Scavenger's Ingenuity, I believe, can only draw Phase Stalker or the Stone Tusk Boar.
Correct, and that's his... Oh. Are we missing something here, Derek? Has he drawn both boars? Or both stalks?
I don't believe so.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah, he wouldn't have had the mana to play it. Sorry, I was going
okay.
short.
Well, this does effectively set up lethal, as long as he doesn't die off the top to a kill command, which is basically the only out now for Flurry is the... not the kill command, sorry, the Corrosive Breath.
Could it possibly be something like Zephyrus for healing, so that he could then attack, but...
He finds the Corrosive Breath
the
with the hero power!
Oh my
goodness! That's lethal!
That is crazy! I thought che0nsu was so far ahead there.
And he was just that little bit of mana off. Even if he got the Stone Tusk Boar instead of the Phase Stalker, he would have been 1 mana off and being able to clear everything there.
Yeah. Bit crazy, and honestly, the play I think that really gave Flurry the best chance was his not attacking with the Faceless Corruptor, because you might think there, oh, well, let me just proc this Explosive Trap now so that I can attack with my minions later. But Flurry says, no, I can't afford to take this 2 damage, and I can put the clock on che0nsu anyway, just by sticking the Dragon Bane. I think it was really good recognition. Maybe a little bit fortunate by rolling double taunts, but still very well played.
Yeah, it was a very well-played game there. I think there were also some very slight differences that could have been made, especially by che0nsu in the early game. Obviously, Flurry's early game was basically non-existent. He was just on the hero power on turn 2 and 3 plan, and then hoped to swing it back thereafter. But, you know, tossing away some of the 1-drops, we could definitely have seen a slightly more aggressive approach onto the board there for che0nsu. But overall, I think it was a very well-played series by Flurry overall, especially when you consider the fact that his turn 4 play of the evasive Feywing instead of the Dragon Bane basically won him the game. It gave him the clock thereafter to be able to swing things around.
Yeah, and you might think that's exactly what Flurry's mindset was, that the Dragon Bane was actually his win condition. We were looking at using it just to trade well onto the board as a defensive tool. But Flurry says, no, this is an aggressive card, and it might be the way that I can actually race che0nsu. I think very good recognition from Flurry. On che0nsu's side, I do have a couple of questions, but there was a lot going on there really quickly.
It really was, but good stuff in the first game from Flurry. It does bring us to 1-0 in our first series of the round robin. We're going to give the players a moment to catch their breath as we head to a quick break. But when we come back, the conclusion of che0nsu versus Flurry will continue. Welcome back, everybody, to Asia Pacific Hearthstone Grandmasters. You are just in time to join us for the kickoff of the round robin. This is the main portion of Grandmasters for this year, and it's the first match of round robin, 1-0 in Flurry versus che0nsu. But now that the Hunter is taken out of the way, Gia, are the other decks for Flurry looking particularly strong, or do you think they could be struggling a little bit in the rest of this series?
They're looking particularly expected. I would say Demon Hunter and Rogue are two of the highest bring rate classes. And the Demon Hunter, I think, could take a win against che0nsu's Rogue. In the mirror, they look about evenly matched, although Flurry is running the less top-end heavy list, which is cutting the Priestess of Fury and Raging Fell Screamer package, which I think is starting to be favored in other regions as well. Maybe that'll give him a bit of a leg up. But I do think that both of these decks could possibly fall to che0nsu's Face Hunter. Then again, I said the Face Hunter would line up well against the Highlander Hunter, and yet didn't quite work out for che0nsu.
It did not in that particular game, but I think this speaks to one of the things I've seen over social media was Casey, a Grandmaster for Europe, was tweeting out that apparently in his estimation, Rogue will be the deck this week that people will be struggling with, which at first I was thinking, that doesn't sound right. It's one of the most brought classes overall. It has to just be powerful. When you look at what a lot of the other classes, you're seeing aggressive hunters, you're seeing demon hunters as well, both of which Rogue struggles against. Druid, they can struggle against all the removal. And as I believe we're getting to see here, the Rogue up against the Face Hunter, I think this could be a particularly difficult matchup for Flurry.
Yeah, I can definitely see it. Rogue, ever since the beginning of Hearthstone, kind of struggled with healing, except for that little blip in the King's Bane meta. But they're back to their old ways now, taking their face damage in order to advantage onto the board. That's the whole style of Rogue, given their hero power, but that might actually work against Flurry here. He does, however, have one of the best openers possible to go against what Face Hunter has to offer, which is the miscreants, because the lackeys can be very annoying for che0nsu to deal with.
Yeah, just getting all that board pressure down right at the start. And while this is a good rogue hand here, as you know, it's pretty much playing itself. You're going coin miscreant with this hand. For che0nsu, is this a good or a bad hand? He hit the side quest on the start to get all the little annoying leper gnomes down, but the rest of it isn't looking especially forming well together.
Yeah, I feel that his hand is strangely reactive, and you never want to be reactive as Face Hunter. You want to be pushing the damage, making your opponent do the awkward things. So I think that che0nsu already recognized that his best way to get board presence is through the leper gnomes. You see that he had a chance to go for Scavenger's Ingenuity to get the other Stone Tusk boar, but it was just a 1 in 3, more likely to get the Face Stalker.
I'm thinking here, the prep looks pretty good to me. You can just go for prep dirty tricks, and while it's not an especially powerful combo, it does just allow you to spend more of the mana in your hand.
I was looking at that as well, but that would just leave him 2 mana anyway, and it seems like he would only be able to spend 1 of it effectively by playing the lackey, unless he wanted to immediately step the miscreant.
Yeah.
Flurry says he wants something unexpected instead.
Yeah, he's praying to the Hearthstone gods here and saying, give me something. While he does get a priest card, it's unfortunately not one of the healing priest cards. Instead,
No.
Shadow Madness, while recently buffed to 3 mana, is, well, I guess it takes away one of the death rattles of the leper gnome, amusingly enough.
That is pretty cute.
It's a lot of mana to spend, though. If only he had a prep. Oh, wait.
Right, so Flurry is going to take that. Even though it seems a little bit inefficient, every point of damage that he doesn't take is relevant in this matchup.
Yeah, obviously he didn't choose to get a Shadow Madness, but I really like the use of it there because, for the moment at least, it looks like board control is just pretty solidly in favor of Flurry here. Because he's just got so much tempo with the lackeys that he was able to get down. And so the only thing he really needs to be afraid of is damage to face, which he perfectly got rid of with the Shadow Madness.
I'm very glad you stopped yourself before you said in flavor of Flurry. In any case, though, we see Flurry taking a trade not by his evil miscreant, but instead sacrificing a lackey, which I think is very heads up, knowing that che0nsu runs double Unleash the Hounds, both of which are in hand.
And while the secrets for Rogue may be secret, the secret for Hunter is not so secret, as Explosive Trap, again, is the only one in the deck. Flurry is face up here, knows exactly that it is the Explosive Trap, but that does present a difficult question. Does he keep going face in these instances to try and go for the race, or does he just kind of have to stop going for the face damage at all here?
I do think he's forced to at least clear the Face Stalker, but the thing with Rogue is that at some point he does need to go face because he's not going to win through some from in-hand damage the way that's able to do a while ago. It's pretty much limited to the Eviscerate, if that's even in the list. I think it is. And Zephyrus, probably not enough. And that's, I think, the mainest of Rogue in this matchup.
Absolutely. With Ziliax gone, the healing just does not exist. And therefore, setting up for the next turn, it does look like Flurry has got himself the best game plan possible with going for a Togwaggle on 6, and then thereafter, just trying to find the power cards.
Right. And now, che0nsu, aiming the scrap shot face, wants to get his board up to a 4-4, but he's doing a little bit of calculation because the next turn he's coming up on 7 mana, so if he wants, he can go something like Boar, Unleash the Hounds, Kill Command, and the amount of damage that does is dependent on how much Flurry has left on the board, so I think che0nsu actually will not want to be playing his Explosive Trap.
Interesting.
Instead, it's going to cash in the 6 damage right now.
Yeah, this does get the most amount of damage face possible. I was looking at Scrap Shot and calculating the damage as well, because 3 damage to face plus 2 with the hero power would have brought Flurry down to 11, and then 4/4 Stone Tusk for Kill Command Hero Power was lethal on the following turn. The only downside, of course, is a taunt, which is why che0nsu is trying to load up the board as well on this turn, so that he can potentially get through the Shield of Galakrond, which was drawn off the top by Flurry.
Right. The other, I guess, benefit of playing all these hands is that, well, it looks like at least one of them is going to stick, so that's an automatically active kill command without having to expend the 1 mana on the board.
I think this was a very smart play from che0nsu, because I was absolutely with him at first glance that Scrapshot set up just almost 100% lethal.
Hold on,
but
though.
This really locks out the outs for Flurry.
Is this still lethal? I'm trying to find a combination, but I feel like he's coming up 1 mana short.
Yes, it looks like it.
So he can still just Scrapshot, play the 4/4 boar. And if he wants to set up Explosive Trap or the Hero Power.
This does, of course, use his last beast in hand, which you do need to be a little bit afraid of with the kill command in hand, but I think with the amount of damage he's pushing to face, that just does not.
So, for Flurry...
Even preparation here wouldn't allow him to play the wand off of the Heist Baron Togwell. So I think unless we see a miracle off the Waxamancy, that's going to be the key.
Correct. If it wasn't a Discover effect, it really did have to be the wand into like Galakrond for armor just to stay alive versus the Hero Power, but that was not available with the mana he had. And so che0nsu takes the win with the Face Hunter. That game definitely panned out the way that I expect Face Hunter to do.
Yeah, it just shows the dominance of Hunter in that matchup. And again, why we think it's a pretty good bring for this week. Even with a really weak starting hand, it felt like very reactive, not many minions to play on curve. It still just didn't really even feel that close. The Rogue got almost the dream starting hand outside of a Pharaoh Cat or a Big Edwin, and still the damage just kept piling on. And outside of the one real choice, I think, that Flurry had that game of whether you go for the prep or the pilfer there, it really did just end up in a very one-sided Hunter victory. So with both of those out of the way, we're left with, again, pretty much a mirror match here with Demon Hunter and Rogue on both sides.
That's right. And I think this is where the differences in Demon Hunter build will really come into play. Because if there weren't any cards different, obviously it just becomes a 50-50. So I think the real point of contention is what is the better Demon Hunter in the mirror. And I feel inclined to say that I'd like to go for the more consistent one that's not running the top-heavy package to make sure that more of the time you have the early game on lockdown.
I would definitely agree with you there, Gia, but this is not the Demon Hunter mirror quite yet. This is the Rogue versus Demon Hunter matchup. And at first glance, I would say this feels very similar to the Face Hunter versus Rogue matchup. Is Flurry as favored in this matchup as it felt like che0nsu was the other way around?
Before I answer that, I just want to point out che0nsu plays the Blackjack just as a 1-2 here, really prioritizing having some type of board presence or letting it potentially, if he wants to, be shadow stepped as early as now, along with a Secret Blade. And
that's pretty sick, Gia. That's pretty sick.
Very cool. To answer your question from a while ago, though, I feel like Demon Hunter is also strongly favored, but Rogue has a little bit more game against it because Demon Hunter has a little bit less burst from hand compared to Face Hunter. If they get the weapon, it seems like they can equal. But it's a possibility taunts outside of Kane exactly. So I feel like Rogue can sometimes take advantage of that because they do have very good board answers.
che0nsu deliberating for a long time here as to whether it should be the Dirty Tricks or the Ambush. I think... Actually, you know what? I agree with him here. You really want to be getting the card draw down as Rogue because it is the class, most of all, that relies on combinations of cards. It's why it has the combo effect. So if you're just going for Faceless Corruptor on 5 with nothing to put it down on, Ambush just played out on turn 3, that's not strong enough to win this matchup. You need to hit the power cards, which is why I really like this choice of Secret from che0nsu.
I agree. And I think having a minion probably gets answered very easily. It's Demon Hunter. They have so many ways to kill off small minions without expending their own minions. And Flurry also still had the coin in hand, so che0nsu was reasonably sure that Flurry would be expending a spell sometime soon. I think it's very smart. But now che0nsu does end up just playing the secret because Miscreant, of course, cannot be comboed out this turn.
This was a tough old turn here for Flurry. He straight away reached for the 2/2 3-mana Blazing Battle Mage, but he could have gotten an active Frenzied Fellwing down instead with a Coin Cane with a Twin Slice, or just a Chaos Strike plus Twin Slice to get it down. But instead he's taking a much slower turn here, maybe for bigger rewards later on.
Yeah, I think maybe to go for a larger swing turn against Rogue, it makes a lot more sense if you play all your minions at once compared to staggering them throughout a couple turns, because they're gonna struggle to answer at wide boards compared to just
Very good point.
But the Hanar off the top for che0nsu, I mean, he's played 2 secrets, not likely to get another, but it's still just a decent sized body. Helps deal with things like the Umber Wings, for example, if Flurry had that.
Warglaives of Azzinoth, though, with, I would have to imagine, the double Twin Slice here, is able to completely clear off the board, get the 5 damage to face, and the Frenzied Fellwing all in one fell swoop. This is kind of che0nsu's nightmare, because his real big advantage at this point was that he would just been able to lock down board, but Demon Hunter just always has some way of pulling it back.
However, though, the fact that the Feywing comes down is actually pretty good for che0nsu, because it gives him a good target for Eviscerate to finally combo off this Miscreant, which has been in hand for a while. And he can just roll into Kronks at a relatively healthy life total. Not something you can often do as Rogue versus Demon Hunter.
Hide behind yourself.
I say healthy now, but it's already going to change soon. Flurry can push another 4 to the face.
Yeah, this hand has got what it takes to go the distance, I think, for Flurry. Sometimes, especially with the modern lists of Demon Hunter that are cutting some of the card draw, you can find yourself just out of stuff to do very quickly. Here with Chaos Strike for card draw, Sigil Runner for card draw, Metamorphosis, a way to spend a lot of mana, and Altruist as the ultimate payoff at the end. I am liking Flurry's chances.
Right. We saw che0nsu had a chance to trade away with his Faceless to save some health on his face, but I think he knows that as Rogue, he can't just be removing, because Demon Hunter, as you said, has all of these, game plan B that's still really effective. Just go for the burst and give up the board. And so che0nsu knows he kind of has to race, and preserving the health on his Faceless Corruptor might help him survive against an Altruist turn.
Speaking of racing here, Gia, this is a crucial point in any Demon Hunter matchup, is when you ignore the board and start going face. Is this that turn?
I think there's a little bit too much damage for him to do that quite yet. And I'm also just looking at how clean it is to just hero power the 4/1 and play down the Glaive Bound for the swing 6/4 lining up against the 3/2. It's not perfect, but it still puts him ahead on board and maybe sets up for a better Metamorphosis later.
Time grows short.
It's a really difficult dynamic, because I agree that looks like a very powerful turn, but you also want to start playing the cards from your left-hand side of your hand so that you can get down the Crimson Sigil Runner. Metamorphosis doesn't line up especially well here, you'd still leave up a 4/1. So even when you're factoring in all of that, I think it does come to the conclusion, if you're not going face, this is the best way to deal with the board.
Indeed. And you see, che0nsu, with the pickup of Deadly Poison and also Eviscerate off the top, that might give him the license to actually race Flurry relatively soon. I still think he needs to clear off this Glaive Bound. So I think we're going to see something like Devoted Maniac. There's 2 lackeys that could really help him out in this spot, the Rush and the Kobold. But I'd like to see Deadly Poison taken here.
And what I guess this really does for che0nsu, with, like you said, the pickup of the relatively weak at the moment Deadly Poison, means that he can't play Kronks, really. He is looking for that turn to get Kronks on the board where he won't be taking a million damage. So I think for Flurry here, the game plan has to be trying to keep up the pressure while he can so that Kronks can't come down. Or if he thinks he can't do that, just launching everything face, because as soon as that does come down for che0nsu, then the Galakrond hits. The extra armor comes off of Galakrond, and things will rapidly start swinging around.
And I think we saw something very important there, because che0nsu missed the 1 in 3 for the high tempo lackeys to swing the board. He instead expends his Eviscerate, kind of one of the best ways to catch for a sudden lethal, but that puts Flurry in a position where Altruist could get some work done. Maybe not this turn, but next.
Now I am complete.
And this was a lightning-fast turn, but I've got to say, not necessarily such an easy one there for Flurry. He throws down the Metamorphosis, now saying, right, face is the place. We are going for the throat here to close out the game. But although it wasn't an especially impressive one overall, Altruist lined up pretty well against that board, clearing everything off with the Umberwing and Sigil Runner and drawing a card.
That's right. For che0nsu now, he's got to be worried that he's just dead next turn, right? Because the hero power is showing 6 at least, given the on it. So he's got to think, how can Flurry deal another 6? There's things like Twin Slice and Glaive-bound Adept. It's a little bit specific, but I think che0nsu's first priority is looking for ways he can somehow kill Flurry this turn, and if not, somehow generate a taunt. Or try to get the Galakrond so that he can heal up more reliably next turn, in the case that he isn't dead.
And now as we look at the payoff here for Flurry, I think the genius of his gamepad is actually becoming apparent, because Altruist was decent last turn, but it is insane on this turn. This is a ridiculous amount of damage that he will be able to launch through, and Flurry may just die on this very turn.
Okay, so if he shoots Hero Power face, then the Feywing also Fellwing.
But he's got to worry about dying in his own right. He may need to just go for the Hero Power on the Kronks.
So the Chaos Strike is good to go first, I think, because that gives him potential to draw something like Twin Slice. That would have sealed the game, I think. But I think he's got to shoot the Kronks.
I don't think he's got a choice.
I mean, he could say that che0nsu, you just don't have 2 more damage. He did see 2 Eviscerates used already.
Yep. It's just that little bit too scary. There's a mystery rogue spell. There's a lot of damage to the face in a rogue's arsenal, and he still sets up likely lethal on the following turn.
che0nsu gonna start off by digging for a spell. There's the prep you like so much.
Yeah, maybe not so much here. It allows for ambush plus the Galakrond, which does mean you could go like prep, ambush, Blackjack Stunner plus Galakrond all on the same turn. So it's almost certainly the pick. I'm just not sure it's quite enough.
You can even stack the Blackjack Plate again at turn. That's a ton of mana cheated. I think that is definitely what che0nsu is going to go for. It doesn't... Oof, it's a full clear!
I think we came at that from different angles, Gia. I saw a 0 mana backstab being reduced to 0 mana there. But I guess, like you said, that is the clear.
I just feel that, I mean, it's hard to say. che0nsu won't guarantee himself a lethal anytime soon because he's used the burst from his deck. And the Galakrond, of course, fully invoked, doesn't get any weapon damage.
This is just so brutally close here.
Yeah, and very good micro decision here from che0nsu. The order of which he steps the minions puts the Sigil Runner farther in the middle. Oh, that's huge!
Oh.
Ginormous.
I don't know how many outs there are for lethal, but this just means Flurry is not running out of cards ever. As long as he can stabilize the board, the game should be his.
But he's got to be thinking about, well, if he plays a minion here, that triggers ambush. che0nsu gets possibly another 2 damage onto the board. But he's got the I-Beam still in the deck. He's got a freeze now, but he can't play it. Oh, man.
He can't get down the hero power and the glaive bound as well. This is awkward.
I think it just becomes an Umberwing Battle Fiend turn then. And he could...
Do you think... I think this may have just been a mistake from Flurry. What he could have done if he hadn't played the Sigil Runner was start off with the Battle Feed, and then if the ambush is summoned, he could go hero power into Glaive-bound Adept to take out the 2/3 poison.
Good spot there. Maybe Flurry could have been gotten a little bit too carried away by the mana cheat. He's still in an okay spot because che0nsu is not showing lethal.
It's not objectively worse by any stretch of the imagination. Glavebound could just be used to go face now, which is of course a very valid line of thinking when you have a fairly wide board such as this. But like I said, I think if Flurry just locks down the board, that's as good as winning, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Can che0nsu find a way, though? He looks is the most stressed I've seen che0nsu look. And honestly, it's not that stressed. But still, given a man of his lack of expression, I think it's fine. The deadly poison can only get one charge off because Galakrond had to come down. He had no time to refresh the rogue hero power. So it's just going to be 6
it doesn't really even do
damage.
anything.
Well, it puts him in range of getting Kobold Lackey next turn for lethal. I think he's got Ascended Pace.
Whoa!
Yeah. Fearless from che0nsu, but I think he's recognized this is his best way of winning the game. No I-beam from Flurry has to be it.
And now is it 1 damage off lethal? Or 3, sorry. 3 damage off lethal.
That I can see.
Yeah.
But
It's
he's
close,
got
but
Spectral Sight.
Yeah, he can dig for it.
Impatient.
Even the Skull of Gul'dan is not the worst card to play unoutcasted.
Oh, that's got to be lethal now, right? The hero. No, it's 1 off.
I think it's 1 off,
Oh
yeah.
my gosh! And he still hasn't got an I-beam for the heal. So is it now try and dig for I-beam with Skull? That's so much mana expended.
He's just freezing the board. He's saying,
Right.
this is likely enough to win me the game. che0nsu has outs, though. He has serious outs to take this game.
Yeah. If it's not the Kobold Lackey, he could get Ethereal into something, and then there's just the natural draws in the deck, though I believe he's used both Eviscerate. Any other Lackey generator could help him out. Ah, the shield! That's 2 rolls for Lackeys. He's gotta go for it. That's a little prayer. That's not the one he wants, but he's got another chance with the Shield of Galakrond. Kobold or Ethereal into Eviscerate or Sinister Strike.
Oh! Can
Oh,
that keep him
no.
alive, though?
Can he? I doubt it. I really doubt it. Maybe from his
Flurry can't use
perspective.
the Warglaives to clear, right?
Uh,
Because he'll just die if he attacks into any of these minions.
okay. So he can create 3 taunts.
Yeah.
I mean, by the end of the turn, 5 health, 4 health, 5 health. He wants to make it as awkward as possible for Flurry, so I think the 5 health is the right stat line.
Yeah.
At the same time, he can't only taunt 2 minions because that makes him a little bit more unsafe.
Yeah, I think you just taunt up your 2 frozen guys. That looks good to me.
But surely Flurry has it, right? He has so many outs to draw. I-beams, he's got Skull.
I don't know, Gia.
There's 1. And I think that goes on to the 3/4. 1/1 can shoot it down.
I'm trying to count it as quick as I can, but I don't think that's quite lethal, right?
He can use the Warglaives after he heals up, so...
Oh, he heals up and then he can use the Warglaives.
Right.
Okay,
I
okay.
think that's
Yeah.
lethal.
Takes out the shield,
Mm-hmm.
the Adept. I-beam and the 1/1 into the 3/4. That's lethal.
Yes. Flurry's stressed out. There is a lot of commands to be made, but he has it. He can I-beam as long as he leaves one of the 4/3s able to attack face.
Yep.
Then he will get the lethal.
He sees it as well. It was so close there.
Oh my
I thought
gosh.
for a second that che0nsu would be able to take it, but the might of the Demon Hunter does shine through in the end. What an unbelievably tense game for so early in the day here. And I've got to say, well played to Flurry there. I think that, you know, the main point there for me was when you start going face and when you start holding back, and the 2 consecutive turns where he shifted from trading off the faceless corruptors into launching everything face was just absolutely spot on.
And to che0nsu's credit as well, I really liked how he played the rogue game as early on as what secret to choose and whether you use the blackjack that early. I think is very good recognition for him. The one question I have about was about the use of the second eviscerate. Granted, he got pretty unlucky with lackeys all throughout. I think the whole nature of the game could have shifted if che0nsu had just gotten one more kobold or rush lackey early on in the game, or right there at the very end.
The slimmest of margins that could have swung it around. I mean, I'm sure that che0nsu is sat there right now thinking back right to the start. You know, maybe if he had gone for that ambush on turn 2, even though it would have been less card draw and we were praising him for his right decision, maybe the other player would have won him the game. It's so difficult to know all these varying branching paths that can happen in these incredibly difficult, long games. But at the end of all of that, what it does mean is that Flurry is one game away from taking the first win of the round robin, and his rogue is the last deck with which he has to do that.
And it's gonna be the mirror, and both of these players are not playing Galakrond Rogue. I think that has fallen off in popularity just a little bit, but people are settling now on this secret package. If I'm list, it's nearly card for card the same. The only big difference I'm seeing is that Flurry has one Boom Pistol Bully, which would be huge in the mirror.
Yes, it is absolutely devastating. It's good if you can just play it for 5 mana. If you can get that card off of Wand or Galakrond for 0 mana, your opponent can just pack up right there.
The whole reason that Boom Pistol came into play was when Galakrond Rogue was the meta and people were trying to beat the mirror. Just played on curve, it shuts off so many things from the other side because basically the entire deck from Rogue is Battle Cry minions. And che0nsu, instead of the Boom Pistol, is running the second copy of Eviscerate. So if it does get to a point where it's somewhat like last game, becomes bursty off the top, maybe that's an advantage to che0nsu.
But I agree. While it can become bursty, the face of Rogue Mirrors, now that Leroy Jenkins has been moved to the Hall of Fame, has changed drastically, Gia. In my opinion, it's shifted less of a aggro matchup and much more to a kind of slow control-ish or grindy matchup.
I would agree, but there are the kobolds that che0nsu was looking for a while ago. Of course, it would have been great back then, but it's still pretty good here. Seal Fate allows Flurry to clear the Miscreant with his dagger. Play a lackey as well if he wants.
On wings of evil.
Very, very close at this point. Both players have got some of the power cards that you're looking for in this matchup. Kronks, in order to draw the Galakrond for Flurry, especially with a whole bunch of invokes, could be absolutely insane for him. But on the other hand, if che0nsu can stick a lackey going into turn 6, especially now that he has Shadow Step potentially to bounce one back to his hand, that Togwaggle could just be way too much tempo for Flurry to answer.
Right. And it's kind of the relationship between these two cards that is a big factor for the matchup, because the fact that Togwaggle comes down one turn earlier allows the rogue that has that one to develop and sometimes make it that the other rogue doesn't even have time to play their Galakrond. So, use of the blackjack just for board development and a target for the praise. Maybe the third one isn't what che0nsu exactly wanted to see.
Yeah, I think looking for the ethereal or faceless lackeys there to get a bit more tempo or options in the mid game. But I'm never too sad to see a kobold lackey. You can just hold on to them and swing the board back later on.
I'm looking at even shadow stepping the kobold as early as this turn, because it looks like his turn 5 is already locked up as the Shield of Galakrond. And then he could go the 0 mana plus Ice Baron on turn 6. Just to guarantee it. I mean, he's rewarded here anyway because it sticks.
Yeah, I really like your thinking, because I agree that that is the kind of best thing you can do. I think with how much mana che0nsu has to spend, he'd probably be pretty happy with going for it on turn 7 if he had to. And even if you map out the next few turns for Flurry, Shield of Galakrond is very likely on 5, sorry. And that gives you a good chance with your own Shield of Galakrond coming down in response for the lackey to actually just stick on board behind the taunt.
Fair enough. And che0nsu here, I guess he was also thinking he doesn't necessarily have to commit to his own shield on 5, because doing the responsive shield oftentimes loses you the game if you can't clear the opposing one, because then that 4 or 5 could take a VT and then get transformed or evolve or whatever. che0nsu instead, looking at the Ancestral Guardian, not too bad of a body at all. Reborn, always a bit annoying for Rogue.
Kind of. I agree that it's difficult to remove in one fell swoop, but it just takes a backstab and a hero power, and all of a sudden, that minion's completely disappeared, and you're left with no tempo at all, which is a scary concept, because when you're going into your Togwaggle turn, you really don't want to be behind on board.
And normally I would say, well, if Rogue is spending their 2 mana for hero power on turn 6, it's a win, because their 4-cost minion is the Devoted, usually. But Flurry, with the pick of Evasive Feywing a while ago off the Dracon, potentially very annoying for che0nsu.
And it is just so much in this matchup about making your opponent's turns as difficult as possible, not wanting to give them the tempo swings when they need it. Because for che0nsu here, by shadow stepping the lackey here, I think that's a very obvious play. It's a powerful play, getting the Togwaggle down next turn, but Flurry knows what's up.
Right. And Flurry's thinking, how's the best way I can punish him for taking a slow turn? And my first thought is that Feywing. But Flurry is also thinking about, does he need to go bigger? Does he need to play the Kronks now? Make sure that he has Galakron available. Take that slow turn out of the way.
He was definitely considering that. The only problem is that it just walks so perfectly into Kobold Lackey plus the Ancestral Guardian taking it out. You just can't go for that there.
So now, che0nsu, I think this is still definitely a Tog turn. He could clear the Feywing, funnily enough, with the double lackeys, but it seems a bit too slow. I would like to see him put 2 damage on the Feywing, even though it doesn't kill it off and might get a good trade on the Tog. Oh,
I disagree. I think I prefer this play. Yeah, it sets up... You still have a lackey in hand, 100% for next turn. It's such a big tempo swing here in going for the double Kobold to take it out. And, you know, the point of Togwaggle a lot of the time is to swing tempo back into your favor, and this kind of does that even better anyway.
okay, I can get behind it. I still like having the wand online as soon as possible.
Very fair, very fair.
But for Flurry now, Galakron in hand gives him potential to swing later on using Kronks that way for the board clear. This is very back and forth. The way I love to see Rogue turns.
Yeah, I think that's in such an interesting place right now. It's not the best use of Flick, obviously, because he wants to find his own invokes as quick as possible to get the Galakron online, and Flick destroys all copies of Shield of Galakron in both players' deck. But it's good enough.
First secret of the game, John, for che0nsu there. Is he thinking about the crown? Is he thinking of... It's gotta be wand. Look at his hand, it is so light.
I think wand is significantly the best option here.
I would agree. But che0nsu weighing all the options. Alright. I was gonna say first secret of the game, John. Yeah. Both of them have had both their blackjacks.
Yeah.
Flurry's held on to both.
Well, there it is, though. The pickup of Praise Galakron is actually a deceptively huge pickup for Flurry, because it allows him to fully invoke the Galakrons. And with Kronks in hand, that is very, very spicy indeed. Now, all of a sudden, for che0nsu, he needs to get something good off of that wand.
I think che0nsu knows what's up as well. He's seen all of the invokes come down. He's seen Flurry develop wide onto the board, kind of force che0nsu to defend from 2 angles against the follow-up Galakron and against the immediate threat. So it's gotta have to be a stellar one. Oh, those are very low value.
That is a terrible one there. It's not the end of the world, but che0nsu, he can clear the board very easily on this turn, develop a little bit of tempo of his own.
So many.
But his own power cards have to start coming through soon.
I'm even looking at finding some way to get the dirty tricks down just to make sure that he gets more card draw, because he sorely needs it, despite how many cards there are in hand. With the pickup of the Faceless Lackey, maybe this gives him, a fair amount of development. Ooh! Not good. Never mind.
Not good? Yeah, that's just bad.
Take it back.
che0nsu had a very nice clear with the Eviscerate and the Lackey and Dagger to clear everything off. I mean, it does mean he can just push the Lackey to face and Eviscerate the 4/5/4 anyway.
I think now he just holds on. Yeah, I like this. Seems better.
Oh.
It makes Flurry have to worry a bit about the Pyromancer, but don't worry about
Flurry,
that after he's drawn his cards.
He's not worrying about a thing right here. He is absolutely
Oh.
on cloud 9.
I was about to say this was also a terrible draw of free cards, but the Togwaggle changes everything. Of course, the Wand for Flurry can't be played this turn. It's potentially huge.
Of course, he needs a Lackey to activate it, which means the 2 mana could just be spent on Hero Power this turn. I wouldn't hate that, but he could just go for it next turn and instead utilize the tempo, of Shadow Jeweler.
Very clean. If he wants to, he can even use the Blackjacks.
I never lie.
Suppose.
I never tell the truth.
Sorry, I mean on the following turn with the secret that he discovers.
Right, yes.
Darkness wanes.
I agree. And the really big thing here for Flurry is he can just start launching things to the face. He doesn't really need to worry about clearing off this board anymore. He's got Kronks for if things spiral out of control.
Completely agree. He's got such a high health total, it doesn't make sense to give che0nsu what he wants, which is more time. But that Faceless Corruptor draw for che0nsu is absolutely huge.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
He's got to test for some secrets. I think that's the first one Flurry's played. So by starting with the Praise, he can cancel out Dirty Tricks as a possibility. Then he plays a minion to cross out Ambush.
Which it is.
Yep.
You better
So I think he's pretty happy to see that over Bamboozle because that's pretty annoying sometimes.
And that does now mean that che0nsu in his own right is fully invoked. So a Galakrond off the top, which is not especially unlikely, it's got to be said with only 13 cards left, potentially could put che0nsu right back in the lead. This is so far from over.
The use of Eviscerate for clear again makes, in this situation, a lot more sense because he's far off from being able to burst, so che0nsu is trying to consolidate his board state. Look at the bad news that Kronks can make work of this if Flurry so chooses.
That does, though, again, I'm trying to find the light at the end of the tunnel here for che0nsu. That means it's 5 damage that isn't going to his face.
Sure. Oh!
Wow, Flurry's actually really close to just lethal here with Kronks, Shadow Step Kronks. It's only the taunt that's keeping him alive at all in this instance. The Blackjack Stunner...
Well, here's my question.
1 mana off.
Does he not just set up the 3 turn then and ignore this board? Because what's Rogue gonna do if they're bored outside of exactly Shadow Step or something to clear their own minion and then draw their Kronks after their Galakrond?
I guess so.
I think I like it. Just go for the 5 damage, step it, and then deal 10 next turn. But
the problem with that is that if Galakrond comes down, of which che0nsu would have had 3 draws because of the dirty tricks, that just puts that plan to a halt.
Sure.
It's close to the right plan, I think. It's really almost there. And with the weapon to face now, maybe it becomes the right plan to just Shadow Step it now and then get 10 damage on the following turn.
Right.
Yeah.
This che0nsu can now see probably Flurry's game plan of more burst from hand. So he needs not only the heal from Galakrond, but just a way to race as well. It's not there.
So the outs involve Draconic Lackey into Alexstrasza to heal up to 15.
So many.
That's all I'm seeing.
That's all I'm seeing. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else. Even a Taunt Lackey doesn't get the job done, of course, against Kronks, Step Kronks. che0nsu doesn't know that there's a second Shadow Step in hand, so his best game plan may just be to try and withstand the 5 damage.
True. So think about
And
getting
play the
tons.
Kronks.
Yeah, it seems
Yeah.
a lot less far-fetched than trying to get Alexstrasza or something like Ethereal Lackey into Clever Disguise into healing from Priest or something. That's not going to do it. So I think looks like Flurry has this all locked.
On the wings of evil.
There's the Alex. Oh my gosh.
He actually would have got it.
Being results-oriented 101 right here. Of course, that wasn't
fair,
wrong by any means from che0nsu.
It's not purely results oriented. Like, I think he knew that there was a real chance that he would just die to the Kronks. He would have died anyway, as we can see.
The question is whether you think that the chance you're dead there is higher than the chance of rolling Alexstrasza.
Yeah. But overall, a very well-played series on both halves, actually, I think, despite che0nsu taking the loss there. And congratulations to Flurry for going 1-0 up here in the round robin. I think che0nsu played that mirror very well. He set up for the Togwaggle very well, even deviating from that game plan, despite setting it up a couple of turns earlier, because he realized how powerful it was just to swing back the board in his favor. But in the end, he just didn't find the power cards that you're looking for in a quick enough time. And a fully invoked Galakrond is a difficult thing to stand up to at the best of times.
As well as a total of 3 Kronks battle cries. Well, at the end, he didn't need the third one, got the Eviscerate instead. But well played to Flurry. I really like everything from the lineup build, the inclusion of Highlander Hunter, even though it's not as creative, I would say, as the Face Hunter. I think it's still a very powerful deck. And very just good recognition, the way that he played the Highlander Hunter, particularly against the Face Hunter, I was very impressed with.
I was very, very impressed overall. Well-deserving players to be in Division A. Speaking of, we can take a look at the rest of the schedule for today, which is vastly majority Division A players, and therefore majority South Korean and Japanese players, as they are almost exclusively filling up every slot in Division A. They have just been putting on such a dominant performance, and the real flag bearers for each of those two countries have to be Glory and Surrender, finishing first and second for Glory and Surrender respectively in the Swiss portion. They have just been doing so well so far.
Yeah, Glory, the most consistent player with high results as well. Kin making top 8 all 3 weeks, also very impressive, but not really putting on the top 2 and top 1 finishes that Glory has had. And Surrender, of course, having place into first place wins, very, very impressive. But now we're on to, I guess, only the top of the group that they'll be facing off against each other. And it's very cool to think about how they have something of a grudge match coming up, because in the Swiss, Surrender actually took all 3 series that he faced Glory in.
He did, that's right, 3-0 in each series, I believe. There were a lot of 3-0s overall over the past few weeks, and most of them, or a lot of them, were at Surrender's